All right, I'm very fortunate here to have my first guest for the first episode of the podcast. His name is Rain. Some of you may know him as The Daily. He's had an Instagram page for a couple years now. How many years has it been?
I think we're on the 4th season right now.
That's impressive. I view you as sort of the Kickstarter of Senators news fan pages on Instagram. You were one of the first ones. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I would say it's accurate. I think I remember when I first made the account, there was only one account out there that actually had anything in terms of Sens content. But yeah, like I was like the first really active fan page from what I can remember.
Right on. So we're going to jump right into things, and we're going to talk about a little bit about a season preview. The home opener is Saturday against the Rangers, but the puck drops tonight. The Sens are in Toronto to take on the Maple Leafs. Are you looking forward to the game?
Oh, absolutely. You know, anytime it's a game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, especially, you know, considering the whole Scott Sabrin all that stuff, right? That's been going on. So should be a very good rivalry. It seems like the rivalry is heating up a little bit more. So I'm excited for sure.
What do you think the odds are? Austin Matthews scores 4 goals in his NHL debut against Ottawa. How would you like to see Scott Sabrin score 4 goals in his NHL debut against the Maple Leafs?
That's definitely something I would love to see. Probably not likely. You know, odds are probably pretty low, but honestly, if anybody on the Sens can just bag 4 goals, it would be a perfect start to the season.
That's what I like to hear. So we're going to talk a little bit about the preseason. You had a chance to watch some of the games. What did you like or dislike from what you saw?
You know, I really like the look of Anders Nielsen. He got a lot of playing time in the preseason, and he looked sharp. You know, he did really good, especially against Vancouver there. And in some of the preseason games as well against Toronto. I think he played in the one against Toronto, actually.
Yeah, he played, I think it was in the first game against Toronto when he played the first 2 periods and he looked really solid. He got the shutout for the 2 periods against Toronto. And then he faced a lot of shots against the Canucks and let in maybe 4 or 5 goals before the empty netter.
He had a few games where he looked really solid. There was a couple shaky spots, but you know that's gonna happen in the preseason when you're just kind of getting into the rhythm of it all, right?
Small sample size too, but last year down the stretch he really solidified what looked as a shaky goaltending picture in Ottawa.
Yeah,
and Anderson looked incredible in the preseason as well. So
yeah, he was another guy that looks comfortable. So they both look really comfortable. So that goaltending duo should hopefully help us a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. Obviously.
Maybe buy some time for Hogberg to develop a little bit more.
Yeah, that was another thing actually too that I didn't really like about the preseason. I found we didn't play the young goalies enough. Mm-hmm. Like I think after like the first 3 games against Toronto and Montreal, they just brought Hogberg with them to Vancouver, and that was it. You know, like Gustafsson and Decord got sent down, which you know doesn't really make sense because it is just preseason, right? And well, I guess you know you do want to get your other goalies kind of you know warmed up a bit for the season, but I don't know. I was kind of disappointed that you didn't get to see a little bit more of you know Hogberg and Gustafsson and Decord too.
So those are a few players that got cut. Out of the players that actually made the team out of camp, were there any surprises for you?
Oh, it was definitely Scott Sabrin. that was the first one. But Eric Brandstrom, he looked good. He did. But I thought Christian Jaros looked really good as well, which is kind of what surprised me the most because it's like, you know, Ottawa's been very hesitant to bring up their younger players, especially in defensemen, right? Like, think about how long it took them to bring up Shabbat to the NHL, right? But, you know, I think maybe Brandstrom can take that next step. And, you know, it's actually good for him to learn with Ron Hainsey as well because he will be playing on that second pair with him, right? So definitely Sabrin and Brandstrom for the 2 players that I'm probably the most surprised that made the team.
Yeah, Sabrin came out of nowhere when we signed him to the PTO. I didn't even know who he was. I'm in the same boat as Austin Matthews on that one.
Yeah.
And then when he fought Ben Harper, I was like, oh no, Buddy's going to get killed, because Harper was like undefeated last year for the Sens and he had like 12 fights.
Yeah, we remember watching him fighting last year, and it's like, oh wow, this is a big tilt.
The only thing that he's good at is fighting.
Yeah.
Big boy.
Pretty much.
Yeah. But then I looked at Sabourin's stats and, 8 points in the AHL last year. Like, this guy's never going to play a game in the NHL. But he worked hard, and, the injury to Balsers hurt, but it opened an opportunity for Sabourin to get in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's good to see the hometown boy, I guess.
Yeah, that was another thing too. Hometown kid. So it's going to be very special to him, I think, to
Yeah.
kind of get to play in his first couple of NHL games here.
Mm-hmm. So of the cuts, who would you say was the biggest surprise for you?
Probably Logan Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Not that he was really productive in terms of points, but the fact that he was cut just kind of made you wonder, like, what Ottawa's kind of thinking. It's a given too, though. When you look up the middle, you got Colin White on the top line, and then after that, it's kind of shaky, even with White at the top line. You got Anisimov, Tierney, and Pajot.
Yeah.
So where does Brown really fit? And they tried playing him on the wing those last few games there, which is another thing too. Like, kind of edged Sabourin out too, right? Like, So Logan Brown, he was a surprising cut. Hopefully he develops a little bit better in Belleville. And another one was Nick Paul.
Right.
Just simply for the reason being that he's kind of coming down to his last season in, like, probably for any organization. You know what I mean? Like, he's kind of at a spot now where it's like, you kind of got to prove, like, I'm an NHL player, and I don't know. He hasn't really done so. So not making the team, especially on this Senators team that we have now, that's going to be a tough thing for him, I would think.
Yeah. One thought I had about Nick Paul was that in his last preseason game before he got cut, when he played against Vancouver, I really liked what I actually saw from him. So I was actually surprised when they sent him down, because with all the talk from DJ Smith and Pierre Dorian that the number one thing they're looking for is that you're working hard. Like, he was playing the body. He looked good on the penalty kill. He was never not moving his feet.
Mm-hmm.
So compared to, maybe Scott Sabourin, I would have liked to see Nick Paul get his shot, because in previous years, he's never gone for a stretch more than 10 or so games. He had, in his first season, he had, I think, the 25 games, but he was only like 20 or so there. And so I thought I would have liked to have seen him get a chance, but I guess that wasn't in the cards.
No, and well, that was another thing too. You said they're looking for hard work and stuff, but if I don't know, you attended the Fan Fest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you watch, like, the practices and stuff, like, every guy out there looked good.
Right.
Every guy out there looked good. They were all working hard. Not one guy was, lazy per se. Everybody was trying really hard, even in the preseason games. Like, everybody, like, I think the Senators overall, despite the 3-0 loss to Montreal, the 6-4 loss to Vancouver, they looked good. They looked good. They looked like they were all playing really hard out there.
Mm-hmm. I was actually at the 4-0 loss to Montreal, and that was a really tough game to watch in person, because no matter what, nothing happened. The team, they didn't really generate anything. Like, Formanton had a great chance in the first period and got robbed by Kincaid with the glove hand.
Yeah,
and then after that, there was not much of anything. Like, my buddy Nathan was at the game with me, and he just described it as the worst game that he'd ever been to. So.
Yeah, it was kind of a disappointing game too when you look at it. You know what I mean? Like, there wasn't really anything too positive to take away from it, but
and that was the game where the third line in that game was Jonathan Davidson, Alex Formanton, and Josh Norris, and it was a tough outing for them because they looked outstanding in the rookie tournament, and they put up points, and they looked like they really had a shot at making the team. But then in that 4-0 loss to Montreal, they failed to generate anything offensively. They were on the ice for a few goals against. So it was tough to see them get cut down, and that was their only opportunity that the three of them had in the preseason, was the one game that they played, and then they only got about 10 minutes of ice time before getting cut. So that's tough to see. I would have liked to see them get a few more minutes. but they're going to get a chance to develop in Belleville. What do you think about those 3 players?
It's going to be interesting, and you can take those 3 players too, but I think Belleville as almost a whole is going to be very interesting to see, because like we're also leaving out guys like like Logan Brown and kind of still Nick Paul, who has had a significant AHL impact for the Belleville Senators. I think it's really just all of those guys: Brown, Abramov, Formanton, Norris, Davidson, like Jaros, Lejoie, like all of those guys have potential to be something, and hopefully, one of them kind of looks better than the other in terms of like Ottawa needs like that, a little bit more of a scoring touch. So hopefully we can get that from one of the 5 guys or 6, whatever it is, right? So, but yeah, all of them as a whole, and especially those lines down in Belleville, they're all building that chemistry down there, and hopefully that can translate to the NHL one day.
And Vitaly Abramov as well, before the concussion, he looked really good. So as you said, the top 6 or even the top 9 in Belleville, and in the defense with like Lejoie and Jaros, who saw significant time with the Ottawa Senators last year. It's looking like a squad that might not only make the playoffs, but potentially make a run for the Calder Cup.
And that's kind of exactly what you want if you're the Senators. You know what I mean? Especially the fans. Like I remember when the Binghamton Senators won in 2011. Look at the amount of players off of that team that made the NHL. You had Robin Lehner, Mark Borowiecki, Mike Hoffman. There's just so many players from that team that significantly have stood out for the Sens in one way or another. And I feel like that's something that could also happen. But the thing is with this new Belleville team is that there's just so much more talent that you're looking at compared to that 2011 roster.
Yeah, like when you look back at the 2011 roster, it's sort of like they had the star players, but some of the players like Corey Locke, and some of the others, like they never amounted to anything in the NHL.
Yeah.
Like the chances they got, but hopefully this bunch of players, like you can see, like they're all so young compared to some of the players from 2011 who were already veteran AHLers. So it's very exciting this time around to see how so much hope from the Belleville team.
Yeah, it'll be exciting for Belleville for sure this year, especially after how close they were to the playoffs last year.
Yeah. Another change in Ottawa this year is the coaching staff. Guy Boucher, Mark Crawford, Marty Raymond, they all had to pack the bags. We got a new coaching staff. What do you like? What do you dislike from what you've seen from them so far?
Well, going back to that fan fest, I was there fairly early than most people. I don't know what time you got there at around, but I was there just in time for like the first practice, and you could really hear, all the coaches, very assertive in what they want. You know what I mean? While the players are skating, you can hear DJ Smith like skate harder. You know what I mean? Get going. Like whether it was he shot a puck into the corner and he's like, go. Like he was very demanding of what he is looking for and what he feels like is going to take this team to win. And you even hear a lot of the players, like they all seem to really be behind what DJ Smith is all about. You know what I mean? Like they seem to like him. And that's something that, was a problem with Guy Boucher, was that the players, had their different opinions, and even fans and even the general manager and owner. You know what I mean? Like there was always something with them, but as of right now, in terms of DJ Smith, like nobody has had a problem with him from what we know. And that's something that I think really makes a big difference between him and all the other guys that we've had as well. So this new coaching staff looks really good. And, in terms of playing hard, that's what they want, So that's going to be something that I think is going to be a key factor in the years to come.
People might consider what I'm about to say, they might call it a bit of a hot take, but one thing I've always noticed about coaches, especially in Ottawa, is that they come in the first year, they do really well. Like if you go back to Paul McLean, 2012, he gets the team into the playoffs, and then they actually made it back-to-back years. That's the only time since 2008 that they've done that was with Paul McLean. He wins the Jack Adams, and then the next year they miss the playoffs. So then we bring in Dave Cameron, and they're out of the playoffs by a mile. Record-setting run, the Hamburglar run. Dave Cameron gets the contract extension. The next year, they miss the playoffs. We bring Guy Boucher in. He's a god in his first season. Like, people loved Guy Boucher, the way that he spoke with the media. He was never shy. He always gave them hours of material to work with, and made it to within one goal of the Stanley Cup Finals, and then just a complete tire fire after that. So I think that a coaching change can never be underestimated. I think that DJ Smith could come in this year, and you never know what can happen. Like last year, I thought Montreal was going to be more of a basement team because they just didn't have any. They traded away Pacioretty. They weren't looking good at all.
No, they weren't.
At the start of the season, and then Claude Julien comes in. They get adjusted to the system. They get Shea Weber back, and they just fall short of the playoffs last year. Do you think there's a possibility this year with the Senators that with the new coaching staff, some of the younger players coming up, how do you feel about the Sens' chances of making the playoffs?
In my post this morning, I made it a point that we are in a new era of the Ottawa Senators. You know, for the first time, we are starting a season with, like in a long time, the first time in a long time, we are starting the season with no Erik Karlsson, no Mark Stone, no Mike Hoffman, no Matt Duchene, no Ryan Dzingel, no Kyle Turris, and the list goes on. So the real question is, we are in a different spot than we have been in a very, very long time. We are not in that position anymore where we are a middle team. You know, we are considered one of the lower teams this season. So while making the playoffs would be huge for the Ottawa Senators, especially in a season where, you know, like obviously if guys like Colin White, Brady Tkachuk, like everybody breaks out, Drake Batherson, and we make the playoffs and these players like look good, you know, they look elite or of some sort down that line, like, yeah, there's no problem with making the playoffs, right? But I think a really important thing this season is trying to add that generational talent of Alexis Lafreniere or even any one of the top 5 selections that are projected to go in the top 5.
Yeah, like Quinton Byfield or Cole Perfetti looked outstanding in the summer showcase.
The Swedish kid Holtz too.
Mm-hmm.
They all just look really good. You know what I mean? So like I said, like while playoffs would be amazing, it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, being a bottom feeder team the last few seasons, especially in 2 seasons that we didn't want to be at the bottom, this is kind of the one year where you do. You know what I mean? But at the same time, as a Sens fan, you want to see some sort of progression. You know what I mean? And so anyways, like I was saying in my post, right? Like nothing is impossible with the Ottawa Senators. And we've kind of learned that from, you know, that Hamburglar run, the pesky Sens in 2013. You know, like all of these memories that we have, the 2017 Stanley Cup playoffs, you know what I mean? And the list just keeps going on and on. So you can never really rule it out with the Ottawa Senators, but you can know what you want. And I don't think playoffs is something that, you know, you completely rule out just yet, because there's always a chance.
Yeah,
there's
like
always a chance.
The first few games of the season, if they happen to go like 4-2, you know, I'm gonna be cheering just as hard in the first like 10 games of the season as I would be if I was watching them play in the playoffs, just because, you know, come December we might be 10-20, we might be out of it by then, but so that's why I'm just so fired up for the first game tonight, because everybody starts the season 0-0.
And that's what's important, right? Like this is like I said, like we're in a new era of the Sens, and this is where it all begins tonight. So if you're a Sens fan, like how can you not kind of sit here and feel like a kid, like waking up on Christmas morning? You know what I mean? Like you're getting ready to watch the Sens play a elite Toronto Maple Leafs hockey team that the Senators have proven in the past that can beat the Leafs, whether it's with Mark Stone and Matt Duchene or without them. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like it'll be very exciting to watch tonight's game and just see how this season as a whole comes together. But like I said, like nothing is impossible. Like you can even look at guys like Colin White. If he becomes that first line center that the Senators need, what do you do with the other three guys behind him? You know what I mean? Because you have center prospects waiting in Belleville as well, like Logan Brown, for example. So what do you do with, Tierney, Pajot, even Anisimov, right?
Yeah. That's one interesting thing about the Sens lineup this year is that from the first line center to the fourth line center, if you want to call it that, is that besides Anisimov potentially, because his play may have been and his statistics may have been elevated from playing with Patrick Kane the past few seasons, but you look at Jean-Gabriel Pajot, he's not a fourth line center. He's capable of putting up 30-40 points as one of the best penalty killers in the NHL. Chris Tierney is a 24-year-old player who had 48 points last year. He almost cracked the 50-point barrier.
A lot of assists.
He's a very good playmaker. He's not a bottom six center. And then you look at Colin White, and he, in his rookie season, cracked the 40-point mark. So,
Yeah. And that's kind of where it gets exciting. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the unfortunate part as well. Because you look at Pajot, who's a huge fan favorite. And me personally, I would love Pajot to retire an Ottawa Senator, just because of the memories that we all have of him in the playoffs, and he is a good player. And there's a few fans that I've seen on social media and stuff that kind of nail him for last season, but it's like he was coming off that injury as well, and you just kind of got to write off that last season for him. You know what I mean? He's got a fresh start. And in terms of looking at all the centers, Anisimov would probably be the one to go.
Mm-hmm. And he only has the 1 year after this left on his contract as well. Like Zach Smith and him both had the 2 years remaining, but because of Anisimov's contract structure, his contract was more desirable for the Sens, and I think he's the better player anyway. He even actually looked impressive in the preseason, scoring 2 goals, and he has those hands, and he's scored 20 goals in 4 of the past 5 seasons. So he's not a fourth line center either. So you look at down the middle, I'm excited to even see what Anisimov can do. DJ Smith is going to be able to roll 4 lines at a time, and it's not going to make a difference. And
they're all very similar.
Yeah.
That first line kind of stands out the most. Tkachuk, White, Brown. And that's going to be the one that's going to be like, all right, watch this lineup. You know what I mean? Because that is probably the future first lineup of the Ottawa Senators. You never know what's going to happen with Connor Brown.
That's what I was going to ask you, if you had any dark horse candidates for like a breakout player this season.
It's honestly, for me, it's kind of been Colin White.
Mm-hmm.
I drafted him in fantasy for the reason being that, someone has to provide that scoring touch for the Ottawa Senators. And someone is going to be Colin White or Connor Brown. I don't really see, Tkachuk, he's a different type of player. He's almost
already established himself.
Yeah, he's almost like a Mark Stone, just not quite at that elite level where he just plays a very grittier game as well. Like he plays good on offense, good on defense. He's a tough opponent. But yeah, in terms of the real scoring, you're kind of looking at guys like White and Connor Brown, and hoping a guy like Drake Batherson does too, because that's probably the other guy that's most significant when it comes to who's going to be scoring the goals, because that's been the biggest question right now.
Yeah, one thing about Drake Batherson is I may have had my eye on him a little bit more than some other players because I bought his jersey.
Did you?
I did. It was quite the pickup. So, but I was disappointed with his camp. He only got the 1 assist in the games that he played. So I'm looking for him to elevate his game, because that point per game rookie season in Belleville last year can't come from a lack of talent. We know what he can do. He scored the game-winning goal in his NHL debut, which is actually why I bought the jersey. I said, if Batherson scores the game-winning goal today, I'm buying the kid's jersey.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you know, he's still young, and he was training with Crosby and Marchand, and I think it was Nathan McKinnon. Yeah. He's not messing around. You know what I mean? So if he gets off to a slow start, so be it. You know what I mean? Like, we got to let him find his groove in the NHL. If you watch those videos of him at that camp or whatever it was with, you know, Crosby and them, he looks good, you know, and he grew, like, I think it was another 2 inches. He's like 6'3", I think it was now.
Massive
like
man
that.
now, yeah.
Like, how old is he? Like 21, 22?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've stopped growing.
Yeah.
And I'm 20. So it's like, the fact that this kid is still growing at that age, it's honestly kind of terrifying, because this kid has got so much potential as it stands, and he was a fairly late pick too a couple drafts ago, wasn't he?
I believe, fourth or fifth round.
I was just gonna say, I believe he was a 4th or 5th rounder.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw him with Team Canada in the World Juniors, and that was just remarkable.
7 goals in 7 games to get the hat trick.
Like, I cannot see Drake Batherson not being a top 6 forward. I mean, I just say top 6 because, not that that's his ceiling, but because I think that's his, like, minimum potential, to be honest with you.
I like that. So we're going to move on to some non-Sens related stuff, just touch on things happening around the league. Are there any teams that you're looking forward to watching this year besides the Sens?
I have a few. One of them is the Dallas Stars. This is a team that I almost feel silly talking about right now, because it's like, for like, I think the last like 4 years I've always said, like, oh yeah, the Dallas Stars, you know, like, they're going to do something. They've missed the playoffs. They've gone first round exit. They went to the conference finals last year. Right? Did they go to the... No, they didn't.
They lost in Game 7 double overtime to the Blues in the second round.
Yeah, the second round. Yeah, I was
so
just
one
thinking
could
that.
say, like, they were 1 goal away from the cup.
Yeah, so, you know, when it comes to that kind of stuff, it's like the Dallas Stars are kind of in a position where it's time to do something. You know what I mean? Like, you have John Klingberg and Miro Heiskanen, Ben Bishop, and you have Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, Joe Pavelski now.
Radulov.
Radulov. They lost Matt Zuccarello, but, you know, and Rupe Hintz as well. Mm-hmm. You know, he had a hell of a time in the playoffs for Dallas. Again, though, that was playing with Zuccarello, but still, like, there's still that talent on the roster for that team to kind of shine.
And even on the third line and the depth that they have, adding Corey Perry and Andrew Cogliano.
Yeah, I forgot they added Corey Perry too.
Jason Dickinson, and Jason Robertson from the Frontenacs, who I've watched quite a bit over the years, being from the Kingston area.
Oh yeah,
like, he has so much potential as a goal scorer. I was just watching him in the warm-ups one game, and I noticed the way he releases his shot. It just reminded me, like, exactly of how Mike Hoffman released it. And even though Mike Hoffman never scored 30 goals as a Senator, like, you could just, the way that he releases his shot is unlike any other player in the league.
Oh yeah, Mike Hoffman he was definitely something special.
So if I'm comparing Jason Robertson as a prospect to Mike Hoffman, you know that I think pretty highly.
Yeah.
So, and that's why the Stars are my pick for the Cup this year, so I agree with you on them.
Yeah, they're my pick too for the Stanley Cup. Definitely. And the other team that I was thinking about too was the New Jersey Devils. But they're also one of those teams too that, you know, not a cup prediction for me, but it's a team that, you know, should be fun to watch. Adding Jack Hughes, PK Subban, like, they did so much with their off season that it's almost like if you don't make the playoffs this year, what is going wrong in that organization.
Well, that's the one thing that I feel about the Devils is I don't think they're going to make it just because I don't think they have the goaltending.
Yeah.
Mackenzie Blackwood looked great last year, but Corey Schneider he went a year without winning a hockey game. How do you do that as an NHL starter?
Yeah, that was actually the one thing. Literally the one thing that I was like, if there's anything that's going to happen, or like that's going to happen bad to the Devils, it's going to be that goaltending.
So unless Mackenzie Blackwood starts 75 games and wins 45 of them, I can't see Corey Schneider having such a bounce back season. Like if the Devils make the playoffs with Corey Schneider as their starter, then Corey Schneider's got to win the award, the Bill Masterton.
Yeah, for sure.
Another team that I'm just going to touch on quickly that I'm excited to watch this year is the Canucks, just because they're so young. They're my team from the West that I think are going to make the playoffs that didn't make it last year. They've just got
I could see it. I could definitely see it. It'd be interesting, too, to see how Thatcher Demko plays.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can kind of do something, because I think they're still rolling with Markstrom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see how Demko turns out for them as well, because that'll be huge.
Mm-hmm. So here's another question I have for you. Who are your 3 favorite non-Senators players, like that they not including players that have been traded away from the Sens, but like players that have never been a part of the Senators organization? I know you have quite the jersey collection, a lot of Sens jerseys. You've got the Greiba game worn, you've got the Carlson Team Sweden jersey, but like maybe if you were to branch out from your Senators jersey collection and scoop up 3 jerseys from players who were never involved in the team, who would you pick?
Well, I'm going to start with the one jersey that I do have that's not a former Senators player, and that's Alexander Ovechkin. He, alongside Sidney Crosby, growing up as a kid, those have been my players to watch. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure yours too. Those are the players, like, if you're playing outside road hockey with your buddies, you're like, oh yeah, Alexander Ovechkin scores. You know what I mean? Like, that's just what was normal for us. So, I don't know, Ovechkin, he's always just, and he came off a 50-goal season last year too. Yeah, it's like crazy. Yeah. Like, the guy's always got a 50-goal season. So, he's definitely one player that I admire big time. And he's a really big superstar as well. Another guy from the San Jose Sharks, Kevin Lebank. He got a contract this year that was so unbelievably team friendly. It was insane. Not that he's like an all-star or anything, but he is just an overall solid hockey player. He works hard, even watching him in the playoffs too for San Jose. Like, he looks good and he looks comfortable out there on the ice. And then after that, I kind of got to go with a goalie because, I'm a big goalie fan. And if you know me, my favorite goalie is Robin Lehner. But after that, and this one kind of hurts to say because we lost to him so many times, but Marc-Andre Fleury, he has just been phenomenal. He has had such a phenomenal career, even still in Vegas. Like, I honestly thought that he was going to get to Vegas and probably, slip a little bit because of how, bad that team was supposed to do.
Right.
And he just kind of took the bull by the horns, and just really stepped up for the Vegas Golden Knights. And I don't know. I think he's getting better.
Yeah, especially in the run they had to the finals. If they had have somehow beaten Washington, he was the favorite for the Conn Smythe that year.
Yeah.
And then last year leading the league in shutouts.
Yeah. He was just, I don't know, he's just something special. He's something special, that's for sure.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to talk about, because when you mentioned Crosby and Ovechkin, like, I just think back, like, I really liked Ovechkin when I was younger, like when I was 10 or so, just because who didn't? He scored 65 goals in like his second or third season. The one thing I didn't like about Ovechkin was that he was dirty. And like he got some suspensions back in the day for boarding from behind, and then I completely gave up on Ovechkin when he speared Chris Neil in the groin, and I said, if that wasn't Ovechkin, if the roles were reversed here, Chris Neil would, he would get a 20-game suspension. And, like 10-year-old Woodsy's getting fired up about Ovechkin. But I was happy to see him win the cup. And then both Crosby and Ovechkin answered a question the other day where if they could change one thing about the type of player they were when they were younger, Ovechkin said that he was dirty. Mm-hmm. And they tried to get away from that, and Crosby said that he wished he didn't whine so much. So I really respect both of those players a lot more now than I did when I was younger, and that they've definitely sort of separated themselves from the two attributes that they had that made them maybe not as desirable as a player to the fans, and I really enjoy.
Well, I mean, part of it is just kind of the game, where obviously, like spearing somebody, that's not really part of the game per se, but there's nothing wrong, I don't think anyways, with having a dirty player, as long as you're not trying to end a guy's career or anything, you know what I mean, or like intentionally like really severely injure somebody, you know what I mean, like once it gets to that point, okay, like this is a little ridiculous, but like a guy like Chris Neil, who never got suspended,
not once.
I admire that guy so much, because me, myself, as a hockey player, like when I play hockey or if I'm playing ball hockey, whatever the case it is, I'm a big guy. So it's like I can't really do much. I don't really have good hands compared to everybody else. I can't really skate as fast or run as fast, whatever the case may be. So I heavily rely on my physical side of the game. And whether it's I got to slow a guy up by, giving him a little slash on the back of the leg or something, then oh well, you know what I mean? Like it is what it is.
You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, like that's just kind of player I am. So yeah, like I don't know. I really like that kind of nitty-gritty kind of play style. So when Ovechkin was kind of like that, it's like that didn't really bother me, because like I don't know, man. I love that dirty side to hockey, but in the clean way, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That's what I was thinking about the Sens, over the past week. Now we've got Sabourin, and now that Chris Tierney is the most hated man in Vancouver for pushing Besser from behind about 5 feet away from the boards when Besser's just looking down at the puck, standing still.
What, though?
Besser's one of my favorite players, but...
You know what, though? Tierney apologized for it, and he's never been a guy to do something like that, you know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing, like accidents happen, I don't think Tierney intentionally meant to do something like that, and
not at all.
I really hope that Bozer, heals up,
and he's
fast.
cleared to play in the season opener for the Canucks, so it's all good.
That's really good to hear. Because it was concerning, and like Tierney, he's not that guy. He felt really bad for what he had done. He apologized to the media and stuff.
You don't always hear that either from players.
Another thing, I really like Chris Tierney too.
I do.
He was born across the lake from where I used to live back home. So Lake Simcoe.
That's cool.
So across from where I used to live. He was born in Keswick, Ontario. So I didn't know that for a while, probably until he got traded to the Sens, actually. And when I found that out, I was like, wow, that's like really cool, because I have family that live over there, because it's literally like a 30-minute drive around the lake, right? So I don't know, that was like really cool. So he's just because of that, like that's something that I've always kind of thought of, like, wow, I've probably been like around him in some way or another before, so like that's just kind of like a really cool thought.
I really like Tierney too. I thought that he was maybe the most consistent Ottawa Senator last year, considering Stone, Zingle, and Duchesne, they all got traded, and so like of the players remaining that you take out of the bunch, I thought he was the most consistent, and he's still young, so you can see why he was a fan favorite in San Jose, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him progress this year as well.
Yeah, he definitely was. He, like we were talking about before, like he's an assist machine, and he was just constantly assisting on everybody's goals. Not that he's that big of a goal scorer, but, like, you're definitely not wrong. He was the one guy from that season that he really did stay up to pace with everything, despite the fact that Stone and Duchesne and Dzingel had all been shipped out.
Mm-hmm. And then, but no, he's, according to the Canucks commentary team, he's dirty. I find it funny to hear what other teams' fan bases think, like who's the most, dirty players in the league, like, players that they just don't like. Are there any players from other teams that you have any vendetta towards?
In what sense? Like just because of like
any sense, like they don't even have to be dirty, like you can just not like them for any reason, like your least favorite players in the league.
Austin Matthews.
Captain Underpants.
For the obvious reasons, the 4 goals against the Sens. So I'm a little bit salty about that. Yeah, for sure.
We still got the dub though, so it's all
yeah,
good.
We still got that dub. But that that's just the one thing. Like, just it never matters. You know what I mean? Like anything the Sens do, just like it never matters to the media. So I don't know when Austin Matthews is around and all the hype around him. I don't know. It just kind of bugs me because it's like, Ottawa's definitely had like Erik Karlsson per se. You know what I mean? Like he didn't get that much attention either when he left Ottawa. And then when he left Ottawa, when he was in Ottawa, and then when he left Ottawa, all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, no, this guy, like, he's not doing good. He's not what he used to be. You know what I mean? And like Sens fans are like, well, he's hurt. First off, he's hurt. And second off, he's playing on a new team,
Mm-hmm.
like you haven't been watching him in Ottawa
and he
enough.
Had 45 points in 53 games, if I'm not mistaken, last year.
Yeah, he did really good last year still. And I remember I was talking to a guy, and he's like, yeah, Erik Karlsson's just not the same player he was. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, he plays a full season, he's probably going to hit, like, 70 plus points.
And he's such a warrior, especially in the playoffs. Like, it didn't look pretty last year in the playoffs defensively, but he got them to Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals with a torn groin. And in 2017, he got the Sens within 1 goal of the Stanley Cup Finals with a broken freaking ankle.
Yeah.
So.
you know who he kind of reminds me of is Cam Newton. And I say this as like a big Panthers fan too, right?
No bias.
no bias. But I mean, in the sense, like the physical sense of him, he knows that he probably shouldn't play. He knows that he's probably really hurting himself, and you could see him on the bench in that 2017 playoffs. Like he's not comfortable. He's hurting. He's screaming on the bench. He's been through so much lower body pain, especially that Matt Cook Achilles injury from a few years ago. And it's like, I don't know, the same thing with like Cam Newton. He plays through that shoulder pain, that foot pain, and now Cam Newton has actually gotten to the point where, okay, I'm gonna take a break. You know what I mean? And Karlsson's kind of doing the same thing too. Like it's like, all right, like we gotta fix things here. Like I'm missing half an ankle. Like so he reminds me when it comes to that toughness and how much he just cares for who he's playing for. You know what I mean? And that's something that I think a lot of people really take for granted when they look at players like Cam and Erik Karlsson. It's like, yeah, he's kind of struggling and maybe he shouldn't be playing, but he's only doing it because of how much he cares about his team. You know what I mean? And how badly he just wants to help. That's just the characteristics of the two guys. And that's one of the things that I think makes Erik Karlsson such a special player, is that he loves that city he plays for, regardless of who it is.
Mm-hmm. We've got 3 more questions for you. We're going to get some nostalgia going here to wrap things up. Do you have a favorite Senators goal in history?
Yeah, there's been a few.
Let's cover as many as you want.
All right, so I'll do my honorable mentions. All right, so I only have a couple. One of them being the Karlsson to Hoffman pass in the playoffs, right?
Saucy.
Yeah, and then probably my most recent favorite, or not recent favorite, but like one of them is the Turris OT goal versus the Rangers back in 2012. That drop pass from Jim O'Brien.
Number 42, baby.
And then that Karlsson to Brassard goal, when Karlsson skated completely around like the entire attacking zone and then pass it to Brassard to bag that goal against the Bruins.
I was at that game. Humble brag.
Really? That would have been so amazing, man.
Clark MacArthur's first goal in 2 years.
Oh,
that,
man. That was such a special game.
And then the Phaneuf overtime winner. Like, so those 3 goals right there, you've got my top 3.
Yeah. But what it came down to is my favorite goal from one of my favorite Ottawa Senators of all time was Ryan Dzingel's Game 7 goal against the Pittsburgh Penguins in the 2017 playoffs. When all hope felt lost after that Dion Phaneuf penalty for tripping Phil Kessel, Ryan Dzingel scoring that second goal on such like a weird puck movement. Like if you watch that again, it's like there's a good chance that he could easily miss that. You know what I mean?
And the shot from Karlsson was an absolute rocket, and it just ricocheted off the post. If it didn't ricochet off the post the exact way it did,
it wouldn't have gone to Dzingel's stick. And that was the thing. It's like when Karlsson hit the post, I remember going like, oh my God, like no way. And then I saw Dzingel bag it, and I was screaming throughout my house. I was running. I was like, there's no way we just scored that. You know, like time is running down. We are in the third period of Game 7. Winner goes to the Stanley Cup Finals. It's a really, really unfortunate that we lost that game. Yeah. But I don't think of it like that when I think of that goal. Because that goal was, you didn't know what was going to happen. And that goal was just something so special to so many Sens fans at a moment where it was like, we need a goal now.
Yeah. And even though it was scored with 3 or 4 minutes left, it felt like
it was like in the last minute.
Seconds,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
So
anything
desperate.
Against Pittsburgh like that felt like.
And that goal, not only like did it tie the game, but it gave the Sens fans, like now that we look back and talk about it years later, like we can say we were 1 goal away. And it's not like, yeah, we lost in regulation and, you know, that Game 6 victory was so huge. Like, every goal in that playoff run, like, I just remember so fondly. And like you said, you were screaming so loud for that Dzingel goal.
Yeah.
Like, even Bobby Ryan's goal in the second period against the Bruins in Game 1, I was just like, yeah! You know? Like, it was just so much fun.
And that's what it's all about for me. When it comes to favorite Sens goals, it's like, it doesn't have to be the most, you know, like the one that ends a game or anything. It has to be that goal that just made you feel at that moment like, yes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So second last question, what's the favorite Sens game that you've ever witnessed in person?
Okay, this is one that I love talking about because it was my first game in Ottawa, and I came to another game actually a few months after, but that's besides the point. So it was February 11th, 2017 versus the New York Islanders. Craig Anderson has just come back again from a leave of absence.
I was actually at that game too.
Were you?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah,
this
is my favorite game.
That weekend in Canada, so I was just like, yeah, let's dip over there for the matinee and
Really? Yeah, so that was probably my favorite game. Like I remember Christmas morning I opened up these tickets right on the glass. Like I was first row in the Senators attacking zone. It was surreal sitting there for my first game. And then to have that game mean so much to Craig Anderson as well for my first Sens game in Ottawa just made it like all the better.
And to see him get the shutout as well.
Yeah, and that was the thing too, right? It was almost like that game in Edmonton when he had found out that Nicole was diagnosed with the cancer there. So it was kind of like almost like the same, not as emotional, obviously, but
I'm getting emotional right now.
it was such a very it was in its own way a very emotional win though, still for the Ottawa Senators and Craig Anderson.
Yeah, and then my last question for you: is there a coolest NHL player that you've had the opportunity to meet?
Yeah, Mika Zibanejad. Long story short, I came to Ottawa for that game. This was actually after a couple months after that Islanders game. It was the last game of the season, and I had won 3 tickets to the Leafs and Blue Jackets. And I sold the 3 tickets to come to Ottawa to meet with a friend that I had made here for the first time. And it was her birthday, so I was like, you know what, let's do something cool. So I messaged Mika Zibanejad. I'm like, hey man, like, I'm coming to Ottawa. You're always one of my favorite players when you were a Senator. My friend here, she was a big fan of you too when you were a Senator. Like, we miss having you in Ottawa. Is there any chance that we can say hi to you for her birthday? And he gives it the absolutely. Like, absolutely you can. And, he follows my Sens account, and he still does. And him and I chat from time to time, not too much, like not that we're like best buds or anything, but he is just such a down-to-earth guy. You know what I mean? Like, he's just a genuinely good dude. And, he does those the DJing and stuff as well.
Yeah.
And I love his music. I like all the songs. No bias. I really just do like it.
No, I've checked them out too, and they're really cool.
Yeah, they're really good. So yeah, whenever I say like, yeah, man, like great tune, he's like, like thanks for the support, and like he even supports my Sens account still. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another cool thing that I pretty cool to announce this here is that, like we've been trying to set up a time where we can kind of do an interview with him. Obviously, it's been a little bit tough. NHL players have busy schedules, but we've tried to work on an interview, so we'll see if we can hopefully figure it out again this season. If not, then that's unfortunate. But yeah, he's just definitely been one of the coolest NHL players that I've ever met. And another cool thing actually was when I went to go meet Mika Zibanejad, I saw Ryan Dzingel down there too, and I was like, "This is like, I'm like, this is way too much. I'm like, this is way too much. This is so cool. You see like all the New York Rangers coming out in this, like, out of their tunnel talking to all these people. Like, this is just crazy. Oh, and actually, another thing with the Zibanejad thing, he has a lot of family here in Ottawa. So one of his things was, like, he's not really sure if he can get me on that list. And this is the one thing about Mika that really made me go, like, wow, this is, like, amazing. He said that he has a lot of family that wants to come see him. I believe it was one of his first games back to Ottawa since being traded to New York. So like I said, it was one of them. So he gets me on the list. We get there before his family and stuff, so we get to meet him before. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking at the stairs, and I kid you not, maybe like 30 people with Mika Zibanejad jerseys walk down the stairs. This guy had 30 family members coming to like see him after this game, and he still made time for just some random Ottawa Senators account that he's followed since he was an Ottawa Senator, just for me to come say hi, get an autograph, and, that was it. And he just, the fact that you take that time out of your day to do stuff like that, like, that means a lot to, people like me, who was just a big fan, and now he's kind of he's gained a fan for life. So, yeah, that's definitely the coolest player I've ever met. How about you? Have you ever met any?
I met Mark Stone every time the Sens did the hometown tour. I would go to whichever venue he was doing. So like one year it was in Kingston, so that was really easy, 20 minutes down the road. One year it was in Brockville, so I went there. And then one year it was in Barrhaven. I was like, I'm dipping it to Barrhaven. I went up in the morning to get the bracelet and then actually drove home because the autograph signing isn't until like 6 in the evening.
Wow.
So I made the 2 trips in the one day, and every time I met him, I would get the most absurd thing I could for him to sign so that he would actually remember me. So the first time I took a rock because Mark Stone, so yeah. Rock Stone, same thing.
Yeah.
So I said, hey Mark, is there any chance I could get you to autograph this stone for me? Haha. And he's like, because if you've ever met Mark Stone before, he's like really, he's not very easily excitable unless he's scoring a goal. Like he's always the same sort of monotone character. He's very chill. So he's just like, oh gee, I've never had anybody ask me to sign a rock before. And then so over the years I've got him to sign my jersey, which I have framed now. I blew up a picture of his celly from the game against the Pittsburgh Penguins on April 7th, 2015.
Yeah, that's one of the games I have as one of my favorites watched on TV. Yeah.
When they were down 3-0 in the first period, like the playoff run, like all the Hamburglar wins, they were for nothing. There was no way we were going to come back. And then I said, I remember the game in February where they were down 4-1 in the third period against the Penguins, and they came back and lost in the shootout. You know, we've still got 40 minutes to go. This run isn't over yet. The boys are going to come back. I just knew.
Yeah,
and
that
so
was
then
such a special game.
The Mark Stone overtime winner, Mark Stone, again.
Yeah.
And so I blew up that picture and got him to sign it, and I said, hey, this is the greatest goal in Sens history. And he's like, it was a pretty good goal, I guess.
Yeah, no, he sounds like a very humble guy too. Eh? Like he's just kind of like, you know, like he knows what he's there to do. He's there to win hockey games, you know.
Yeah. But your Mika Zibanejad story, that's one of the coolest stories I've ever heard about any player in the NHL. Like,
yeah,
I didn't know that was a thing. Like the players that went on the road, like they made lists, and like if you got on the list, you got to meet them.
Yeah, it was a very from what I understand, a somewhat complicated process, just because it was like he had literally 30 family members to come see him. And like I said, just taking that time, and like that made that whole weekend, what he did made that whole weekend so special to me, and a weekend that I won't forget. So he's honestly, and I picked up his Sens jersey actually the other day too. At the Fan Fest, they were selling jerseys for like $20.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll take that. I bought one. My buddy bought one. He also bought a Carlson one too. I'm like, he's not even a hockey fan. He's just like, these are like $20. $20 for these things.
They had the chess on. They had the Lazar jerseys for sale. And then
saw
they had
those.
the Zibanejad. So I was like, it's a no-brainer.
Oh, did you grab one too?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah. Which one did you grab? Did you grab the red one or
the red, yeah.
Yeah, I grabbed the black alternate one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I'm building up quite the collection actually from that. But yeah, when I picked up his jersey, it was like, yeah, like this is like the coolest thing. He's a really cool guy, and that whole story was really cool.
And I think you shared the rumor the other day that the Rangers are going to potentially name him captain on opening night, and I couldn't think of a more deserving captain in the NHL.
I fought with a guy on my personal account on NHL discussion there about a guy. He just didn't know what he's talking about. He's like, this is like just they're only naming him the captain because like this is the only guy that can do anything here, and he's just like he's not even that good. I'm like, dude, you're like honestly like just you got to stop talking. Like you look like an idiot right now, you know. And I'm like, from somebody who's like met the guy and knows like he's just a really good guy. You know what I mean? He's just a really good guy, and he's a leader in that locker room. He's getting better every year. You know what I mean? Like every season, I'm pretty sure he's just gotten better, except for the years where he's been hurt, obviously. But like, he's a great hockey player, and I honestly can't think of anybody on the New York Rangers that is more deserving of that captaincy than he is.
Yeah, I remember watching one of the Sens' last games of the season last year was on the road in New York, and the Rangers have this huge award. I forget the title of it, but I think it's like in honor of the firefighters of New York. So it's a very prestigious award that they've been doing for decades.
Yeah.
And just watching the pregame ceremony and Zibanejad won that, I didn't realize how highly the Rangers organization thought of Zibanejad, because he'd only been there for, the 3 years now, but and he's developed into a star player too. Like when he was traded from Ottawa, that instantly became my least favorite. Like I can forgive
I'll never understand
the
it.
Carlson trade because we got such a great return. I'll forgive the Mark Stone trade because Dorian's hands were tied.
Eric Brandstrom too.
Yeah, like,
you know, like
forgive
but
these,
that Mika
these
Zibanejad
moves.
one, you just really only got Derek Brassard.
And they turned that into Gustafsson, Ian Cole, and a third-round pick. Like we've got
you got Gustafsson from it, but like if you're gonna trade, think about it right now. If you kept Mika Zibanejad, okay, I don't think him and Brassard were neck and neck that season. So what difference would he have really made? You know, like special thanks to Brassard for everything that he did in that year too.
Yeah.
But it's like when it comes down to it, it's like even with clearing out all the the entire roster now, what does Mika Zibanejad get you now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure, like you probably could have got Philip Gustafsson, but who else would that have got you from Pittsburgh? You know what I mean?
Right.
Probably at least a better draft pick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was, I don't know, that was one thing. I wish he just never left, because even still, like, I think he'd be a great fit in Ottawa. He's still really young.
And I forgot that we actually also got a first-round pick in that Pittsburgh trade, but it was like the 22nd overall pick, and we traded down to draft Bernard Docker, who I'm not terribly high on. I don't know about you, but
I am, actually. When it comes to defense, you have to understand that it takes them a little bit longer to get, going. But Bernard Docker, no, he I think there is definitely some upside to him for sure. It excites me too, because he's at North Dakota alongside Johnny Tyconic and Shane Pinto there as well. And Christian Wolanin came from there too.
And Wolanin, he's my favorite defense prospect on the team. I met him at FanFest a couple years ago, and he's just a really cool guy to talk to, because there was nobody else in his line, and he actually talked to me for like 5 minutes. So he's a really...
I would love to meet that guy, man. He's by far, like, Shabbat and Brandstrom aside, probably one of my favorite defensemen on the Sens right now. Like I've always kind of been one of those guys to be a fan of a player that's, I like Erik Karlsson, you know what I mean? But Ryan Dzingel to me was just like, I appreciated his game like a lot more too, because it's like, he was a really good player, and he turned out, it's a little bit unfortunate now, his situation with Columbus, and who knows how he's going to play in Carolina this year. But I've just kind of always been one of those guys to just appreciate the other players on the team as well, while still supporting the other guys too. Like, I still have Karlsson jerseys, you know what I mean? And I have my Shabbat, my Kachuk jersey, and I would love to eventually one day get that Christian Wolanin jersey as well, because he's just a player that,
once he changes his number, of course. Cause
is he going to change it?
I can't picture him.
I like the 86. It looks good.
I mean, there was one post that I forget who posted it, but it was just one of those NHL pages, and they like tag somebody who needs to change their jersey number. And so I tagged Wolanin, and I said 24 greater than 86, and he liked the comments. So that was funny.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Oscar Lindbergh wore 24, right? Last year for the Sens.
Well, my favorite number is 42, and the only players that have worn that are Jim O'Brien and Justin Falk.
Falk.
But 42 backwards is 24. So if Wally changed his number to 24, I'd scoop that jersey up in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah. I think my it is actually in my Hockey Ultimate team name on NHL 20 is Wally's World.
Was that in honor of Wolanin or just a coincidence?
Oh yeah. No. Definitely in honor of Wolanin.
Yeah.
Yeah. He is just one of my favorite defensive prospects on the team right now. I like to even try to model my game after him too.
Yeah.
He's just a really cool player, I think.
And super underrated too.
Oh yeah, definitely super underrated. Maybe a little too underrated.
Like
honestly.
People like talking before his injury this year, they're like, "Oh gee, I wonder if Wolanin's gonna make the squad."
But it did get to a point too though, where it's like, like people have started to really recognize like how good he actually is. Yeah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how he ends up being as a player.
I just really hope that he has a quick recovery and comes back as strong as he played last year and continues to grow. Yeah, that'll be huge for him. Well, I thank you for your time. This has been an awesome conversation. Thanks. We've covered a lot of ground, and I really appreciate you coming on. Yeah, no, I appreciate it a lot myself. I've wanted to do something like this for my account as well, and there's a lot of things that I'm doing on Daily Sens News and getting ready to do for the account that I'm really excited to do. So I feel like this is a really good way to kind of, start everything off. Another thing too that I plan on doing, like post-game things. I want to get a little bit more in touch with my, followers, kind of develop a little bit more of a personal relationship, I guess you could say. Like even walking around school today here, I bumped into a guy. He's like, "Hey, aren't you Daily Sens News?" I'm like, "Yes, I am." You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't know. It's just really cool when I get to meet followers and stuff. So when I can, when I heard this opportunity, it's like, this is something that I want to get to do. I want to get to know my followers better. And I've made quite a few friends off of it so far. And I look to continue doing things to keep bringing all that fresh content and stuff for everybody. So
This was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
No problem. Thank you.